are coming on the air with crunch time ahead of the midterms. Show up or shut up time. And the bigger guns, they are showing up, okay? Top Republicans and Democrats today fanning out across the country to try and boost turnout to give their party the best shot at controlling Congress. And in PA, you've got Meadows back on the campaign trail today after that high-profile debate overnight with John Fetterman. We've got it all covered with our team on the ground. Also breaking tonight, a new federal investigation into New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. It's not the first time this has happened. We'll talk about what he says about the whole thing and his role as chair of the powerful Foreign Relations Committee. Plus, hospitals scrambling now, packed with kids, running out of beds, raising the question, why isn't there a vaccine for RSV since we've known about this for years? We've got the answer and the new hope coming up. There's also new hope for people who are keeping a close eye on the housing market. Why it's a good thing for people who want to buy a home that mortgage rates are at a 25-year low. And L.A. police now trying to figure out who leaked that racist tape that led to the resignation of the city council president after saying they wouldn't investigate. We'll talk about why they're changing their mind later on in the show. Let's be honest, it is a packed show. I'm coming to you on the ground from Florida, out on the campaign trail. It is getting really real, folks, with less than 2 weeks to go until Election Day. Tonight, as we speak, you have top Republicans and Democrats fanning out to key battlegrounds to try and boost turnout in places like Wisconsin. You've got Senator Bernie Sanders ready to hit up Oregon, California, Nevada, Texas, arguing Democrats have to campaign more on the economy. President Biden, his cabinet set for a big blitz, along with former President Obama. Not just a lot of people, but a lot of money showing up in these races. Look at this. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania raising more than $1 million in just the last 24 hours after his debate with Dr. Mehmet Oz last night, a debate in which Oz's words are already being used in Democratic campaign ads. Watch.
This is who Dr. Oz wants in charge of women's health care decisions.
I want women, doctors, local political leaders, local political leaders, local political leaders.
Oz would let politicians like Doug Mastriano ban abortion without exceptions.
We should note Oz has said he does want exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother when it comes to abortion access. And all of it, by the way, as voters are already voting early, millions of them in key states like Georgia, like Pennsylvania, and in Wisconsin, where we find our Shaquille Brewster. So, Shaq, a lot of midterm headlines coming up today, and I'd like you to cover a couple of them for us, if you will. We'll get to Pennsylvania in a second. That debate where there are questions now about John Fetterman's health, about Oz and his position on abortion. But in Wisconsin, you've got another couple of key races, and you've got some folks coming in from all over the country focusing on what is becoming yet another sort of ground zero for the midterms.
Right, Hallie. Key races, close races, and also some big names coming here to Wisconsin. I'm at a rally for Tim Michels right now where he's getting a boost, getting some assistance from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Youngkin, of course, winning in a blue state in Virginia. It was a surprise victory that we saw. That is what Michels wants to do, not in a blue state of Wisconsin, but it is a state that President Biden won just 2 years ago, that President Trump won 4 years before that. So you're getting a sense that so many of these campaigns are looking for that outside help where they see these national implications for this race. It's not just on the Democratic side, but you also it's not just on the Republican side, but you're also seeing this on the Democratic side as well, Hallie.
Well, Elizabeth Warren in town, too. What we're seeing, Shaq, where you are and in these other battlegrounds are a focus on a couple of big issues. Crime. I know that's been an issue where you are in Wisconsin, right? The economy and the cost of living, and abortion access for Democrats specifically, trying to go after Republicans on this. These are the same themes that we've seen east of where you are in Pennsylvania, right? That debate overnight, very high profile. I think by now everybody's heard about it, right? What happened when John Fetterman, who's recovering from a stroke, went up against Mehmet Oz there. You've seen Oz now back on the campaign trail, not Fetterman yet. Oz focusing on crime, even as Democrats are hoping to make that abortion line that he talked about really stick to him in the next 13 days.
That's right. In so many of these states, you're seeing almost an election being fought on two fronts. Democrats pushing the abortion line. You saw that in Pennsylvania after the debate last night with that ad that you just played. But then you have Republicans staying on the issue of the economy and crime. And that was the focus of candidate Dr. Oz earlier today. Just a couple of hours ago, he was out on the campaign trail with Nikki Haley. You saw him talking about the issue of crime. He was there with Pennsylvania state troopers with the Fraternal Order of Police, talking about his tough on crime crime stance, and also going on the attack against Fetterman, saying that he is soft on crime. And well, he specified what he means by that, and saying that it's just not on policy, but that he believes that Fetterman is too cozy toward criminals and doesn't show that same compassion toward the victims of crime. Those are lines that you're seeing, Hallie, not just in Pennsylvania, not just in Wisconsin, but really all across the country as both parties find themselves in different footing and seeing strength in different issues as they go ahead on the campaign trail.
That's right. Both looking for some momentum here in this final stretch. Shaq Brewster live for us there on the campaign trail. I hear the applause, Shaq. Thank you for using your golf whisper. In Georgia, another key Senate race, of course, where the Republican candidate there, Herschel Walker, just late today, is now denying the allegation of a second woman who says he helped her get an abortion.
I'm done with this foolishness. I've already told people this is a lie, and I'm not going to entertain, continue to carry a lie alone. And I also want to let you know I didn't kill JFK either.
This accuser coming forward by audio only, by the way, voice only, with her attorney, Gloria Allred, offering what she says is evidence of her client's alleged relationship with Walker, but no evidence of the abortion itself. The accuser staying anonymous because she says she's afraid of any reprisals. You'll hear her voice in just a second. She says her decision to speak has nothing to do with politics.
I am a registered independent, and I voted for Donald Trump in both elections. I do not believe that Herschel is morally fit to be a U.S. Senator.
NBC News cannot independently verify these allegations. This accuser is now the second woman to say that Walker allegedly pressured her to have an abortion. He denied that previous allegation, too. As a reminder here, Walker has built his campaign in part around his anti-abortion stance. Ellison Barber is joining us live now from Dillard, Georgia. Ellison, tell us more about what we know in these developments.
So when it comes to this latest accusation, what Gloria Allred presented today was evidence of a relationship of some kind between this anonymous, unnamed accuser and Herschel Walker. She and her team did not present any specific evidence of an abortion. The first accuser had a receipt from an abortion clinic and a check signed by Herschel Walker. Walker denied that the check in that instance was for an abortion, called that allegation itself a lie. But the evidence in that first allegation is very different from what we have seen in this second one so far. Gloria Allred was asked by a reporter if she and her team are going to show a receipt from the abortion clinic. She said no. When asked if she has a receipt, she said that they were not going to address what other exhibits they have or do not have. Herschel Walker spoke to reporters before this press conference took place, shortly after we'd gotten word that a press conference was going to take place and there was going to be an unnamed woman accusing him of being involved in some form or fashion in an abortion that she had in the past. At the time, we had been told that the accusation was going to be that he had driven her to an abortion clinic. The accusation we then heard that this accuser is making is that he drove her to the abortion clinic and also paid for it and encouraged her to have one. Herschel Walker came and spoke to reporters. He said that this is foolishness. He called it a lie. He implied that this is politically motivated, saying that he did well in the debate. And as a result, people who want to see Senator Warnock continue to hold that seat for Democrats, that they are now resorting to this. By his side was Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. He said this.
It's coming from an activist Democratic celebrity lawyer who went to the 2016 convention for Hillary Clinton, and people in Georgia are not this dumb.
Walker's opponent, incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock's campaign, released a statement saying, quote, "We know Herschel Walker has a problem with the truth, a problem answering questions, and a problem taking responsibility for his actions. Today's new report is just the latest example of a troubling pattern we have seen play out again and again and again. Herschel Walker shouldn't be representing Georgians in the U.S. Senate." This statement from Warnock's campaign is a bit of a shift, Hallie, because if you remember when that first allegation came out, the campaign, Senator Warnock himself, they sort of stayed, back. They kind of let other groups, other outside organizations, they let people, everybody else talk about it. They kind of stayed away from it. But this, the quick response they've had to it, it's a much more aggressive, direct approach than we saw from Senator Warnock and his campaign when that first allegation came out. Hallie.
Yeah, you're right to pick up on that, Ellison. I was just in Georgia yesterday on the trail with Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff, and others. And this obviously, before this latest allegation, but Senator Warnock was asked, of course, about Herschel Walker and these allegations. Ellison Barber, live for us there in Dillard. Ellison, thank you for being on the trail for us. We got to get to some breaking news back home in Washington because lawyers from former President Trump have officially accepted service of the subpoena from the January 6th Select Committee, according to a source familiar with the matter. Neither the lawyers nor the committee have responded to our request for comment. But keep in mind that the former president now has been given a deadline of next Friday, November 4th, to hand over documents to this congressional committee to sit for a deposition around the 14th. The law firm retained by Mr. Trump criticized the committee last week for making this whole subpoena thing public before they were told about how this process would unfold. Just a few hours ago, we found out that New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez is now under federal criminal investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. An advisor saying in a statement that Senator Menendez is aware of an investigation that was reported on today, but does not know the scope of that investigation. Coming more than 4 years now after the government dropped a different corruption case against the senator who chairs the powerful Foreign Relations Committee. A spokesperson for the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. Tom Winter is joining us now. And Tom, this is somebody who is well known, I think, in national politics, obviously to folks in New Jersey, key role as he chairs the Foreign Relations Committee, as we mentioned. What's sort of interesting about this, and I'm just going to put it in plain English here, Tom, we know there's an investigation. We don't know what it's about, the scope of it, or what the deal is with it.
That's precisely correct. And really, the person confirming the investigation is that advisor to Senator Menendez himself. So this kind of all came out this morning in an article by Semaphore, an online news website that mentioned that there might be an investigation and that a grand jury subpoena, something we haven't confirmed, had been issued in the course of that investigation. We're trying to figure out, is this even true? What's going on with this? We've since been able to confirm it ourselves here at NBC News. And that advisor to Menendez says not only is he now aware of this investigation, that they don't know the scope of this investigation either, or the particular subject matters, but they do say that if contacted by the authorities, Menendez is happy to answer any sort of questions. I think the big question here, Hallie, is that for a number of years, allegations of wrongdoing involving Menendez, dating back to a federal investigation that started in late 2013, first reported by our colleague Jonathan Dienst in January of 2014. I helped him out in the course of that reporting, and it looked at a whole host of potential issues, including his ties to two former Ecuadorian bank and government officials in South Florida, to allegations of bribery and conspiracy, for which he was ultimately indicted for. At Menendez's trial, there was a mistrial, and then the Justice Department, as you alluded to, declined to continue to prosecute him in a subsequent trial. Now, the person that he was charged with, Dr. Solomon Melgen from South Florida, was convicted, sentenced to 17 years, and at Menendez's suggestion and behest, former President Trump commuted his sentence. So the idea of potential wrongdoing has circled Menendez for years, though we should note he's never been convicted of anything.
Tom Winter, live for us on that. Tom, I know the second that you get anything more reportable on this, you will be bringing it to us. Thank you, friend.
Racing to you. You got it.
I know you will. Thanks. In the last couple of minutes here, we got some breaking news in that could be a real hot mess for President Biden right ahead of the midterms. The growing concerns about a nationwide rail strike, okay? The White House, not too long ago, is responding to another freight rail union that says it's going to reject a tentative deal. We're talking about the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen, which says 61%, the most of its members, with 61,000 members, they're saying no to this deal. You have to remember, this is a deal that the president, the White House, flex some muscle in trying to work out to make sure that, like, freight trains were not disrupted all over this country. That would be a massive problem for the supply chain here. This union rejected the deal because of paid sick days in the version that was put forward by the White House advisory team. The press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, says the White House is asking the companies and railroads to work in good faith to avoid any kind of shutdown. She didn't say whether the president personally would get involved at this point. The two biggest unions still have not revealed the results of their elections, but this is absolutely something that a lot of people are watching, not just economic concerns, but political concerns, too. To Wisconsin now, where the mayor of Waukesha says the city can now move forward in the healing process after a jury found that the person who killed 6 people with his SUV is guilty on 76 counts. 76 very serious counts, including intentional homicide. Watch.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information.
You see Darrell Brooks there just as the judge was reading the first verdict. It took the jury only 3 hours to come back with the decision. It is important here to center the victims, and you're looking at them here, the 6 people who died from the attack last November. It was at a Christmas parade. One of them, Jackson Sparks, just 8 years old. Antonia Hilton is following this story for us. And Antonia, chaotic trial, I think is fair to say, chaotic end to the trial for a few reasons. And then after court, Brooks' only message was just, what is judgment, basically? Tell us more about this.
Hallie, chaotic might actually be an understatement in this case. This was an incredibly strange trial that felt like it dragged on. This was 18 days, and Brooks represented himself, a very rare and strange thing to do, especially when you're charged with criminal charges. This is not a civil proceeding. These are criminal charges. You mentioned first-degree intentional homicide, reckless endangerment, ending the lives of 6 different people and injuring more than 60 others. You know, prosecutors laid out a really airtight case that he had intentionally driven through the crowd and done this, that he even evaded law enforcement after the fact. Throughout the trial, he was really belligerent in his behavior, at times yelling back and forth with the judge, constantly objecting, asking sort of bizarre questions. At points, he was thrown out of the room. And then the trial really concluded today the same way that it began. You know, as the jury was coming into the room, he was arguing once again with the judge in the room. As the jurors were coming in, people were supposed to be rising and waiting for this verdict to come down. And then we heard someone in the back shout that they hoped that he burned in hell. And so, you know, this has all been so dramatic and so bizarre, but certainly this is the ending these victims and their families had been hoping for. Guilty on all counts and more than likely to spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Antonia Hilton, thank you for that update from Waukesha. Thanks for being on top of that for us. Appreciate it. New federal data shows that 3 out of every 4 children's hospitals beds have a kid in them right now. Okay, so 75% of kids' beds in hospitals are full, which means hospitals are scrambling because of a surge in RSV. It's getting to the point where doctors are teaching parents how to take care of their kids at home because there's not enough room for everybody in the hospital. One doctor telling our team here at NBC how he's helping parents learn to remove mucus from their kids' noses just so they can eat. But here's the thing, RSV, it's not like it's a new disease. We've known about it, right? So why is there not a vaccine? Our medical team's been doing some digging and found out there was a clinical trial back in the 60s that was a total disaster. 2 kids died, many were hospitalized. That basically set back vaccine development for decades. Dr. John Torres is here with more on this. And this is getting new attention, Dr. John, because of RSV that is sweeping many parts of the country right now. So many sick kids. We've talked about it on this show. We talk about it's in all my group chats, right? Parents who's like, my kid's sick with this viral infection, et cetera. And the question comes up. We get a vaccine for the flu. We get a shot, a vaccine for COVID. Doesn't exist for RSV.
And, you know, the interesting thing is we got the COVID vaccine in 10 months. It was amazingly fast the way we had it. But if you remember 2.5 years ago when we were talking about vaccines, we also said, you know, on the average, vaccines take around 10 years to produce, develop, and get out there on the market. But in this case, we've been talking about it since the 60s. And like you mentioned, in the 60s, they had a vaccine, went to clinical trial, a lot of hopes on that vaccine, but it turned out actually doing worse than not getting vaccinated. And as a matter of fact, like you mentioned, unfortunately, 2 children died from this because of the way the vaccines work. They actually rev up the immune system, and in this case, more than likely, it revved it up too much, and that's what caused some of the issues. So fast forward to 2022, you know, they're looking at making these vaccines, but it's a tricky virus, and it shows you how tricky these viruses can be and how hard it can be to get them under control with vaccines. And so, you know, the studies are going on, the trials are going on, and hopefully we get a vaccine here very soon because we know this is happening year after year. This year happens to be a bad one.
And there is reason to have some new hope here.
There is reason to have new hope because there are vaccine trials going on right now, and they are in adults. There's 2 trials that look pretty good, and they actually have very good efficacy. They're getting towards the end there. The Pfizer one, like you see, they're 86% effective at preventing that severe illness, which we talk about at the end of the day. That's what we want vaccines to do. The GSK one, 83%, but these are in older adults, not in children yet, but they're looking at some therapies in children. One of them is a monoclonal antibody that they think can help, and they're looking at that probably around February timeframe of doing trials and getting information to the FDA. So we are getting there. We're just not there as fast as a lot of people, myself included, would like. But as they normally do, they do it in adults, and then they'll start doing it in children just to make sure it's safe.
It's striking to hear doctors telling parents how to treat kids at home, because one thing that I've seen from medical experts has been this messaging that if your kid is very sick, you should still come to the hospital, right? Don't let these news stories deter you from getting urgent care for your child if, in fact, that's what they need. At the same time, I think a lot of parents are trying to figure out the balance, right? Do you want to take your kid to a packed ER? Or is there something you can do at home? What should parents be looking out for? And when might this start to subside? Because if everybody's getting hosed right now, like at what point does that start to get alleviated?
And you're right, like you talked about earlier, they're telling parents at home, go ahead and suction out that mucus. That helps them breathe better. Cool, humidified air helps them breathe better as well. But one of the things you want to make sure is you're looking for those danger signs, because if you bring them to the emergency room with those danger signs, they're going to keep the child because they want to save the child's life. And some of those are the breathing difficulties. If they're wheezing, that's particularly a reason to go in there. If you see what are called retractions, you lift up their shirt, you see them sucking their stomach in or sucking their ribs in, trying to get that breath in. And in smaller infants, they can have what's called nasal flaring. Their nose starts flaring open because they're trying to get as much air as possible. If you see that happening, then that's definitely a reason to go ahead and take them in. Otherwise, for most children, this is going to pass. Most children get exposed by the age of 2, and it's just cold-like symptoms, and it goes away. But there are those few, and those few turn out to be a lot more right now. Hopefully, we're seeing the peak of this. Usually it doesn't peak till January, February timeframe. Hopefully, this doesn't continue, and this is getting towards the peak now.
Knockwood, Dr. John Torres, thank you. Today, overseas, we're seeing thousands of people out in the streets of Iran grieving the death of Mahsa Amini, the young woman whose death sparked protests around the country 40 days ago. Take a look at some of these videos, right? I mean, we've been talking about Iran. We've been talking about how the images have been so compelling. You can see some of that here. People were chanting women, life, freedom, defying this government crackdown. But the people who gathered today in Amini's hometown also clashed with security forces. Take a look at your screen, however you're watching this. A woman standing, her hair is uncovered. She does not have a hijab on, standing on top of a car as lines of protesters moved in closer to the cemetery where Amini is buried. We talk about the images that tell the story. This is one of them. It's happening as the Biden administration is putting in place new sanctions on 14 Iranian officials for what they describe as the brutal suppression of dissent, with the Secretary of State saying they want to make sure that the people responsible for this crackdown on nationwide protests are held accountable. Keir Simmons is joining us now. And Keir, we talk about this 40-day marker. It is significant culturally. It is significant on a national and international geopolitical scale, too.
That's absolutely right, Hallie. And that image that you so rightly picked out and spotlighted, what an image of that woman standing on top of that car with her arms in the air and without her head covered. That image, those cars lined up, those are crowds of people heading to Mahsa Amini's hometown, the place where she is buried, in order to mourn, but in order to protest too. It is a cultural tradition after 40 days to mark the end of mourning, but it's been turned into so much else today. And, you know, there is a news agency in Iran, partially official, says there were around 10,000 people in the streets. I think you can assume that it was many, many more than that. And then after that image, we began to get these reports of live fire being used and of tear gas being used, of these clashes with the protesters. Once again, another brutal crackdown, the same kind of crackdown, which is why Washington today imposed those sanctions on more than a dozen Iranian officials.
It's a tough question to think about, Keir, as far as what this movement looks like as it evolves moving forward. But I think it is still a question worth giving some weight to, because this is so significant for women in Iran and for women, I think, around the world who are allied with the mission of these women in Iran.
Yeah, it's a good question again, and you know, it's hard to read, isn't it? Let's be honest about it. You know, you're there. In the US, I'm here in London. They closed down the internet in that town today because that's how fearful they are about the message getting out there. Now, look, the US, again, put in those sanctions, and we did just hear from the White House. I just want to read you one part of that message. Our message to Iran is very, very clear. Stop killing your people and stop sending weapons to Russia to kill Ukrainians. So one thing that has changed, and the facts on the ground are what counts. I mean, the momentum is coming from the ground with those women there and their supporters, men who are supporting them in Iran. But I think one thing that has really changed is the approach of the Biden administration. It's only this year, and we just do have to note this, Hallie, it's only this year that same administration was negotiating with the Iranians to try and reheat the nuclear deal. That's gone now. That's over. But the reality is that as much political pressure as Washington now and the West now wants to put on Iran, it's not as significant as the actions of the Iranian people themselves.
Keir Simmons, live for us with this important reporting. Keir, thank you, as always. Coming up here on the show, a big win for Michigan state prosecutors. More people found guilty in the plot to kidnap the governor there. We've got those details in the 5 things in just a minute. Plus, mortgage demand, it is way down from a year ago. So what does that mean if you're trying to buy a house someday? We got a reality check coming up. Los Angeles police now trying to figure out who leaked those racist recordings that created a massive scandal in L.A. and led to the resignation of the city council president. The recording happened during a 2021 meeting, a private meeting, a closed-door meeting of a group of Latino Democrats talking about how to protect their political clout, basically, when redrawing council districts. The council president, Nuri Martinez, and the L.A. Labor Federation chief, Ron Herrera, resigned after the tape came out. It was leaked, rather, but the other 2 council members have resisted calls from the White House on down, by the way, to do the same. NBC's Gotti Schwartz is joining us now. What's so interesting about this, and Gotti, I just want to remind folks, too, this feels like a local story. It is a huge national story because of the sort of way that this discussion went down, the way that the controversy unfolded. The police initially said they weren't going to investigate. Well, now they are. What is with that?
Yeah, well, now detectives are going to start talking to the people that were in the room to see how the conversation was recorded. But, Hallie, there are really 2 different things going on. There's this criminal investigation that is possibly for these 4 victims that were in the room. And by victims, I mean the city councilors as well as the labor union representative. So that's the criminal investigation. Then there is the controversy. That controversy is very different. That is about the racism that was heard inside. Now, originally, LAPD says they weren't asked to investigate. They were not asked to look into this. And now LAPD's chief is saying that one of the victims did ask, or the victims did ask LAPD to look into this. So those 2 things, very different. They're on very different tracks. But the controversy stems from those racist remarks that were made in that recording, which has enraged thousands of people. It's led to protests. It's caused resignations, calls for resignation. And the criminal investigation really is just about who recorded, which in California is against an eavesdropping law. Now, a violation is likely just going to be a misdemeanor. It's something like a $2,500 fine. There's also a chance that this could be thrown out if it does go to court, if it's found that the contents of those tapes had significant matters of public concern, and that outweighed any privacy rights. So it's still unclear what's going to happen next. Hallie?
Is this a factor in politics out there where you are, Gotti? Like, with races on the ballot just a couple of weeks from now on Election Day?
Yeah, well, we've got the 2 remaining city councilors who have not resigned. Gil Cedillo, Kevin De Leon. They are veteran Democrat leaders. All of this happened during that closed-door meeting with the labor leader about redistricting, so very political. But when it all comes down to these particular seats, technically Cedillo is a lame duck at this point. He lost his primary. He's going to be out of office by December. De Leon, his term isn't up during these midterms. It's up in 2024. There is some talk of censure. Both of them have lost all their committee appointments, but right now most of the damage is a reputational black eye for Democrats in this very Democratic stronghold. Hallie?
What's the bar for recording conversations in California, Gotti? I'm just curious. I know there's laws that differ state to state on that. How does that work?
Yeah, so California is what's called a 2-party consent state. In some states,
okay, so both, yeah.
Secretly recording a conversation, yeah. So secretly recording a conversation in, let's say, like somewhere like New Mexico, that's allowed as long as one person that's privy to that conversation knows it's being recorded, and it's done not using a telephone. It's done using like a recording device. But in California, it's a 2-party consent state, which means that a private conversation cannot be recorded without the consent of everybody involved. That being said, a violation, again, is probably going to be a misdemeanor in this case, $2,500 fine, possibly a year in jail, but it's going to be a high burden to get that established in court. Hallie?
Gotti Schwartz, thank you. Good to see you, friend. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, 3 men accused of supporting a plot to kidnap the Michigan governor, Gretchen Whitmer. They were convicted today, all charges. They were part of a paramilitary group called the Wolverine Watchmen. They were found guilty of providing support for a terrorist act. That's the legal term. Their sentencing is set for December. Number 2, the head of Spotify says Kanye West's music is not going to be taken off the platform unless Kanye's label asks for that to happen. In an interview with Reuters, Daniel Ek called the rapper's recent anti-Semitic comments awful because his songs, he says, have not violated the company's policies on hate speech. They are going to stay on the platform, according to Spotify. Number 3, 8 Pine Sol products are being recalled over concerns they could have bacteria that could cause infections in them, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. The recall applies to about 37 million Pine Sol products made since the start of last year. If you have a healthy immune system, the commission says this probably will not affect you, but if you have a compromised immune system, you're going to want to be a little extra careful here. Pine Sol's parent company, Clorox, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The serial numbers, by the way, are up on our NBC website. Check them out. Number 4, some Miss USA contestants say they think this year's winner was given preferential treatment. Now, the Miss Universe organization says it's stepping in, taking over the program for the first time since 2020 and investigating the allegations. Arbani Gabriel became the first Filipina American to win the Miss USA title earlier this month. She has disputed all accusations of favoritism. Number 5, can we talk about Rihanna? Can we always talk about Rihanna? There is always time to talk about Riri because she's back. First single as a lead artist in 6 years. Song's called Lift Me Up, and it's part of the Black Panther Wakanda Forever soundtrack. Comes out Friday. Get yourselves ready. So listen, if you're one of those people who's been in the market for a house, if you one day want to buy a house, if you're like looking about to buy a house, but you're like, oh my God, the prices are insane right now, right? There may be a light at the end of the tunnel. That's because today, people who track the housing market say the demand for mortgages is now half of what it was a year ago. That basically means that fewer people either want to or can afford to buy a house right now because of those high mortgage rates. And you might be thinking, well, wait a second, Hallie, that does not sound great. Like, why are you acting like, hear me out. If demand for home buying is going down, that means home prices will follow, and we're already starting to see some of that cool down. Joining me now is Diana Olick, the great Diana Olick, who covers all of this stuff. You know this so well. It's interesting that mortgage demands are the lowest they've been in 2 decades, right? For a housing market that was so hot, like only a matter of months ago, how does this factor in?
Well, I got to say first, Hallie, I'm so glad that you are so glasses half full, because all the numbers that I have are very glasses half empty. And that's the problem. Look, you had this incredibly red hot housing market. It just turned on its heels just when mortgage rates started to rise. And it was really amazing how fast it did, because rates started to rise, you know, in the spring. They were coming up from 3%, which was crazy low to begin with. Nobody thought that could hold. And they're going up 4 or 5. It was really in June that it's 6%. People were like, hold on. Now we're over 7%. And it's not that people don't want to buy a house, because demographics point to buying. There is so much demand out there. The millennials are in their prime home buying years.
Totally.
It's just like you said, it's affordability. I can't afford it. How am I going to pay this rate? And that's what's cooling down the market.
What about if you own a home? Should you be nervous about this? Like, should you be nervous that your home value is dropping?
No, I mean, I don't think so. It's the problem with home sellers right now is that anybody who wants to sell their house, they're thinking, I've got 2.75 on a 30-year fixed. Why would I trade that up for 7% just because I want a bigger house? So they're sitting on it. They're locked in. And that's why we don't have any inventory on the market. As for people losing value in their homes, unless you bought your house, say, in the last 8 months, you're good. I mean, prices for homes have gone up 40% since the start of the pandemic. 40%. So even if they come back a few percent, 5%, even 10%, you're still in the money. It's just you're giving back some of that incredible, crazy gain that you got. So again, I don't think you have to worry so much about people losing that much value on their homes. Not to mention that mortgage underwriting is very strict right now. It's not like people are over leveraged. They got tons of equity, record equity in their houses right now.
Can I tell you one thing my mom always says to me? My parents are always like, well, when we bought a house in our day, like the rates were like 16%. Like it was like bananas rates back when they were, doing home buying and stuff. The rates were so different. I think the last few years, as you talk about 3%, 4%, even less. Now they're right around 7%. When, do we, I know this is a crystal ball question, Diana, that nobody can really answer, but what is the trajectory based on the reporting from experts that you're doing here on where that mortgage rate goes? Does it just depend on what the Fed does? Does it depend on this recession that we may or may not be in?
It depends entirely on everything you just said. It depends on the Fed. Mortgage rates don't exactly follow the Fed, but they do follow what the Fed is thinking about the economy. And so it depends on what the Fed thinks. It depends on the economy. If inflation comes back, if we start to see, the jobs picture change, all of that affects bond markets, which affect mortgage rates. Now, the Mortgage Bankers Association just put out their annual forecast, and they did say they expect to see the 30-year fix drop to just over 5% at the end of next year. So, don't get too excited for it now, but they believe, at least they believe now, that rates will come back. I don't think you're going to see them change that much. They're going to go a little under 7, a little over 7, depending on what the fluctuations in the markets are every day. They came back a little bit at the beginning of this week, but I don't want to say I'm as old as your mother, but my first mortgage rate was 10%, and my dad helped me get it, and he was super psyched because he's like, look at this rate I got you.
He was like, 10%'s awesome. Right. No, I know. I hear you. Thank you, Anna Oleg. I deeply appreciate you. Thanks. When we come back, we're taking you overseas because there is some stuff going on in Russia, right? They're running nuclear drills. You got Putin saying Ukraine plans to use a so-called dirty bomb on its own land. The U.S. says that's a lie. We'll take you to Kyiv with the latest on how tensions are getting really, tense. Next. A lot more pressure from Russia today, with the country running its first nuclear drill since it invaded Ukraine, with Vladimir Putin repeating these totally unsubstantiated claims that Ukraine is planning to use a so-called dirty bomb on their own territory. The U.S. has said that's just not true. So start with the drills, right? Russia says the goal here was to simulate a huge nuclear strike in retaliation for a nuclear attack on their country. Again, a drill. The U.S. says Russia did give notice they were going to do this. They actually have to do that. And the drills are routine, right? They happen every year. But think about the timing here. Think about the moment right now between Russia and Ukraine. It's happening as Russian officials talk about this dirty bomb claim, which Western allies believe is simply a pretext for Putin to escalate his actions in Ukraine even further. That's the concern, that they think Moscow could do something else by warning of this whole dirty bomb thing. Let me bring in Cal Perry, who is live for us now in Kyiv. And Cal, let me take this in two pieces. Can we just be honest? Like, when you hear the words Russia nuclear drill at the same time that you're hearing concerns about escalation in a war in Ukraine, like, none of this feels good. And I'm sure it doesn't feel good to people where you are in Ukraine.
No, and everybody's talking about it here. It's not like the people here on the streets don't have a plan or don't say, yeah, everybody here has a plan. People carry around these iodide pills. People have plans. I'm going to meet my friend at this time, at this place, and we're going to drive out of Kyiv, and we're going to get out of here. And if it goes off in the south, but it's a small device, I'm going to take cover, but I'm going to stay in the city, and I'm not going to leave with my kids. It's totally nuts that that's the sort of life that people live here, and these are the conversations that they have. But all of the context that you gave is very important context, right? People here are living every day listening to Vladimir Putin, trying to pick up the signals that he's giving on what he's going to do. He's holding two very important places here hostage: a nuclear power plant, which is the biggest one in Europe, and a hydroelectric dam. So if you live in the southern part of this country, you're on an everyday basis wondering what happens to the nuclear power plant if it melts down? What happens to the dam if the Russians blow the dam and they flood these villages? Will my city be part of the city that's flooded? That's the reality here. It sounds frantic, but these are the conversations people are having, Hallie.
The dirty bomb claim, right, is also part of the context and the backdrop to all of this here. You look at what's happening in Kherson, you look at Ukrainian troops moving in there, et cetera. Talk about the situation as it looks like on the ground right now.
So this city of Kherson, right, this is the thing that Ukrainian forces have had their sights set on for months. Russia took this city early on in the war. It is really the gateway to Crimea, right? All of the video you're about to see is going to be on the Dnipro River as people flee from the eastern part to the western part. When I say flee, well, Russia's forcibly removing civilians from the eastern part, taking them across the river towards Russia and moving them. They're doing this for a couple of reasons. One, the biggest one is when the troops arrive, if Ukrainian troops can get into this city, fighting the entire way there, taking casualties, they're going to arrive to a city that's abandoned, that's been destroyed from fighting, and has no one in it to liberate. Put on top of that this dirty bomb threat, right? Vladimir Putin is saying, oh, we're not going to use a dirty bomb. Ukraine could use one. But everybody's thinking if one is used, it could be used in the south. So now the context of the hydroelectric dam, the weird evacuations / moving of people, all becomes something that people are very fearful of, that they're talking about, and they're wondering if 2 + 2 = 4. But really, we don't know, because we're at a point, frankly, in human history we've never been at before.
Cal Perry, it feels startling to leave it on that note, but we kind of have to leave it on that note. You know what I mean? Because that is the note that we're at this point.
Where we're at.
And it's stark and it's upsetting and it's ominous, but it's the reality on the ground.
Yeah, that's where we're at. And just very quickly, and I know you got the show to do, it's pitch black behind me, right? Nobody has power. So
I know,
there's
I'm
also
looking at
a fear
that,
of the unknown.
Yeah.
Like if I don't have the news, like if you're not watching the news, you feel disconnected. And I think people should realize people in the South, they don't have social media. They don't have internet. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Let's talk more about it. Cal, thank you. I'm gonna follow up with you on that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad you're with us. Coming up, a judge says Mark Meadows has to testify now in a Georgia election investigation. We're talking about a guy who was the innerest of inner circles in the Trump White House. What a grand jury may hear from him, plus a Florida teen snatching the top prize in the state's Python Challenge. Oh, look at what he did to win. We'll talk about it in just a sec. A South Carolina judge ruling today that former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has got to testify in front of that special grand jury in Georgia. They're investigating possible election interference by Mr. Trump and his allies. Keep in mind, Meadows lives in South Carolina. That's the South Carolina factor here. The Georgia DA says Meadows was in touch with Mr. Trump, the Trump campaign, other people who were known to be involved in trying to influence the election results in their state and others. A spokesperson for the DA declined to comment, but says Meadows is not going to appear in front of the grand jury at least until after the midterms, while an attorney for Meadows did not immediately return our message asking for comment. I want to bring in NBC's Blaine Alexander. We know that Meadows doesn't want to testify here, Blaine. Like, that's clear, right? But the DA says the investigation shows he was involved in setting up that now infamous call between Mr. Trump and the Georgia Secretary of State, in which Mr. Trump said, you got to find the votes, if you will. This ruling could be significant here in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, and that's because this phone call is what launched this entire investigation, Hallie. It's gone in a number of different directions, but really, this phone call was the genesis of this entire special purpose grand jury here in Fulton County. So we know that the DA is going to ask him about that. And also, he's one of the closest people to the call, as the then chief of staff to former President Trump, as the person who set up that phone call or played a role in setting it up and who spoke on it several times. She's going to ask him about that. Not only was he close to that phone call, though, he was close to the president himself at that time, and that's something that's also going to be central to the district attorney's investigation, what he was thinking, what he was doing in those immediate days following the 2020 election. You know, we know that the South Carolina judge agreed with the Georgia judge, essentially saying that testimony from Mark Meadows is going to be crucial in this investigation.
Let's just remind people where we're at here, because I think there's a lot of different Trump-related investigations happening. The one we're talking about here is the Fulton County DA investigation. I want to show people this is like the Trump investigation Bible sheet, I think you could call it, right? Like one of 5 investigations into Mr. Trump or the Trump org, most of them criminal, one of them civil. And yet they're all separate and parallel in some ways. And yet they are all sort of under the umbrella of concerns over somebody who, from prosecutors, who may very well run in 2024.
Absolutely. And this certainly fits into that in a very significant way. And I think we also have to, of course, talk about the January 6th investigation committee hearings on Capitol Hill as well, because there's a lot of overlap between that and what we're seeing here in Georgia. Because as far as investigations into 2020 go, they're all essentially looking, they're looking at different pieces of actions that all point back to the same overall question, which is, did the former president commit crimes in trying to hold on to power even after having lost the 2020 election? So what we're seeing here in Georgia is many of the players here are also being called to testify on Capitol Hill, vice versa, and certainly a lot of the information is kind of flowing between the investigations as well.
Blaine Alexander live for us there in Atlanta. Gorgeous sunset there where you are, Blaine. Thank you very much for being with us. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, workers at a Trader Joe's in Brooklyn started voting in a union election today. They got ballot count set for tomorrow night. TJ's employees in Massachusetts and Minnesota have voted for a union recently. A lot of people watching this to see, is this going to continue the trend of workers unionizing at some of these chains? From our Midwest Bureau, 2 men who've been accused of cheating in a fishing tournament in Ohio, pleading not guilty in court today. You remember these guys, the fish weight people. They went viral because this video showed them allegedly winning their fish stuffed with weights, with fish fillets, basically that they cheated. Prize money was worth like 30 grand. Both guys are scheduled to come back to court next month. I mean, this is one of those like from TikTok to the courtroom things, you know? From our Southeast Bureau, 28 snakes in 10 days. That's how many a Florida teenager captured to win the state's Python Challenge. 19 years old, beat about 1,000 people from dozens of states and 2 other countries to win 10 grand. The state's Fish and Wildlife Commission puts on the challenge to raise awareness about the invasive species. Can you imagine catching nearly 30 pythons in a week? That is not even, how do we process that? Coming up, are we past the point of no return when it comes to climate change? We're getting into the UN's new warning on this. You're not going to want to miss. Next. So think about that big climate summit that happened about a year ago, where nearly 200 countries said they were going to make big changes to their standards to try to fight climate change, to try to reduce pollution. Well, guess what? Today, a new UN report says the world is just not doing enough. Without big polluters like the U.S. or China drastically cutting back on greenhouse gas emissions, the report says the planet's going to warm up between 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit by the year 2100. If you're like, oh, 3 degrees, whatever, let me tell you this is staggering, okay? Because the Paris Agreement set a goal back in 2015 of 2.7 degrees. This is not a good thing. None of this is a good thing for people who care about the climate crisis. Climate experts say if that warming happens, we're going to see worse flooding, more intense wildfires, more intense heat waves, more species of animals going extinct altogether. All of this coming out and happening just 2 weeks before a big UN climate talk in Egypt. I want to bring in Ann Thompson. And like, what's hard, I think, sometimes about these reports, Ann, is like, it is just grim. It is grim and ominous, because in layman's terms, I wonder if experts are just saying we're kind of past the point of no return.
No, they're not saying that at all, Hallie. In fact, they're saying we still have time. There is some good news in this report that the trend of emissions
ungrim it for us, Ann. Give us the silver lining, you know?
Is the trend of emissions is going down. That's good. The problem is it's not going down nearly fast enough and nearly big enough. The UN says we need to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. We are so far from that. And so what they're hoping when all those countries go to Egypt next month, that they will get together and ratchet up what they call ambition. That is climate speak for cutting emissions. And they really need to see the big polluters step up.
Help us put this in perspective of what happens if the Earth were to warm by even 1 degree Fahrenheit. Like, I think this is tangible for people to understand, because, you know, if you look at what experts say, at 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, right, you still would have Arctic sea ice in the summer. But at 3.6, it's 10 times more likely that stuff melts. Like that just,
right,
it's less than a degree, but it could have a huge impact.
Right, and without Arctic sea ice, our whole weather system changes. I mean, this is all interconnected. So it's very important. But again, we still have the ability to do this, to make a change. And how do we make that change? We move from fossil fuels to renewable power. And that, scientists say, has to happen sooner rather than later, and much sooner.
Part of this is the scale, too, though, Ann, right? Because it is not a function of obviously everybody should recycle, but it's not like if I turn my lights off or get electric. It's got to be systemic, global, huge, multinational corporations, you know, huge countries like the U.S. and China. That's what's going to actually move the needle on this.
Right. It has to happen on all levels. I mean, you and I recycle, and we turn out lights when we leave rooms, and we do all those things. But there has to be, think about how we get around. I mean, just our mass transportation system and our personal transportation system. Why don't they run on electricity? Why are we still using gasoline? Why are we still using diesel? Those are the kinds of transitions that have to happen, and have to happen fast.
Ann Thompson, it's great to see you. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be checking back in when those talks happen in Egypt in just a couple of weeks. Appreciate it. That does it for us this hour. We're going to have more for you tomorrow back home in D.C. Same time, different place. Good to be with you from the campaign trail. You'll see a lot more of it ahead of the midterms. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.